just have a quick peek at our options. We're still flying the FNS Quantica. Now we've decreased the field of view. Let's see if we can't get a slightly better view out of this here. Starboard services. Let's have a look at our processing power. Process is in high mode. We're at power survey. Transactions require we be back in Polevnik in 7 hours. We also have one other we need fittings. There's no stock here on anything. Do we at least have passengers that we can take back with us to Polevnik? Or somewhere en route? Oy, 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 oy. You slimy cunt! Oh my god! Come on! Dear God in heaven. Could you kindly fuck off for 10 fucking seconds? Jesus, tap dancing Christ. Yes, 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 yes. Pick cabin, please. Contract accepted. Get back. Ah! Holy smokers. 1 minute. Oh my God. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Under 3 hours, 2.5 hours actually. None of the people I like to talk to regularly are talking back to me.
Ship disengaged. Exit is clear.
System load is extremely heavy right now. I cannot explain why my system continues to demote the Elite launcher back down to normal priority after I set it to high. This mystery is driving me crazy. 1 second. Oh my goodness. Folks, I think we got it at long last. It'd be far easier if Frontier would just do this on its own. But no, I'll have to do it myself using a process hacking tool. Hello there.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm getting, it says it's transmitting. Can you hear me?
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
That's weird. I'm not hearing anything on my end.
It says it's transmitting. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I still can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Hello? 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 How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's really weird. I can see that your waveform is oscillating, but I can't hear your voice.
Okay, folks, it looks like we got a relog after all that effort. Wow, this is some buggy activity out of the software tonight. Maybe they overdid it. But we've been waiting 2 years for these updates. You would have thought that they'd put it through some testing. Anyway, not satisfactory. We'll try again. Be right back in a minute. Commander Trium once again. Let's see if we can't connect to our designated person that we were just trying to do a voice chat with when the game bugged out pretty seriously. Let's see if this this helps anything.
Tango, Romeo, India. This port is under independent control. Submit a request before docking.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Wow. That's really quite something. Wow. Oh boy. Hey, you there?
Hey, yeah, I hear you, finally. Oh my god.
Holy crap, is that ever buggy?
Yeah, what was that?
Oh my god, I've not seen this game go completely ape like that yet. That worries me.
Yeah.
That performance is crap.
Yeah, that was really weird. I don't know. Like I said in my text, I've noticed it's been buggy in other ways too today. So.
Like how?
Well, the first thing I noticed today, I was out bouncy hunting, and my turreted lasers, like, I guess the axis is reversed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like if the target moves up above the nose, then the turret guns actually point down. And then when the target moves below, then they move up. It's really weird.
I mean, there's no reason I can think of why there should be a problem connecting two players through chat mode. Like, there'd have to be some serious bugs in how the voice comms is implemented, and I'm a high-level programmer myself, so what that means is I'm using languages above C++, such as Microsoft's .NET language framework is where my expertise is, but and I don't deal a lot with C++, but usually I rely on the C++ libraries. A lot of these games, they are still coded in C++. And so they end up having to write driver-level protocols for just about every little damn thing, including chat. And what the problem with that is, instead of relying on someone else's library who's put it through its testing and paces and dedicated to building the best possible chat tool ever to do these kinds of things, they're reinventing the wheel and reintroducing all kinds of bugs into the process again. But never have I seen something this shoddy come out of Frontier. Like, that is a first. That is probably the most serious game flaw, performance-wise, I've ever seen, especially with VR headsets almost completely reliant on voice comms. You can't play this game in a VR headset without having... I mean, I know how to type. Obviously, I've been typing my whole life, and I can do it blindfolded. But it's very, very annoying for me to do it. And I won't play a game that requires that I know the keyboard, you know, where the keyboard is positioned in front of me if I have to only got text to communicate with. I need voice. It's a core game feature as far as a VR headset player is concerned.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
I completely understand.
They have got to fix this. Like, it is quite serious, actually. Like,
I agree.
I would not let this game go out the door this flawed. I just don't understand how you could have a mature, especially David Braben, whose, you know, own background as a software developer. I mean, he was programming back when I was, you know, still sort of a glint in my parents' eye kind of thing. He was doing video game programming back in the 80s. And there's just no reason for this to happen. Like, it's shocking that he's even leading. I mean, I realize he doesn't deal with the day-to-day coding effort anymore, but it's shocking that he would let something like this go through without a proper QA process being applied. And there's other aspects to testing, like you mentioned. There's like been bugs all through the communications processes, the mail and stuff that just wasn't fixed and was hanging over for 2 years. Like, they did have they had a stable code base, and now, I mean, I'm just sitting here complaining, but that's what it sounds like. But it's just, like, unacceptable, like, given the fact that you need a game that is completely stable in order to do what they're trying to do here. Otherwise, it's completely pointless. That's why VR is so unique, is that it raises the bar quite a bit, actually, from a console player. Because you can move your head around, and you can look and see all the 3D objects around you, from various perspectives, regardless of where they are in the game. You have to be ready in your game universe to be able to, make them visible. They have to be doing something. They have to appear when they're supposed to appear and disappear when they're supposed to disappear. Having your laser turrets, reverse axis on you. Like, it's just weird. Like, why wouldn't that go through QA, Like, firing sequences.
Yeah, and I would think that, something like that should have been incredibly noticeable in beta. And so it's just, it surprised me too. I'm like, really? This should not be an issue, because they put it through open beta and everything. So it was like blatantly obvious as soon as I got into combat, and I was like, why am I not taking this guy down? And then I noticed, oh wait, my turrets are pointing in the wrong direction. What in the world?
Did you email support about it right away, or did you take any action? I mean,
the only thing I did do, I went on the forums. I noticed they've got quite a few tickets on it already.
Okay. So you don't have to file one.
Yeah. But here I am at a station. I'm going to trade out my guns because
They don't work.
use the turreted weapons.
Yeah, the software is buggy. Like, especially in the year 3304, like, as if your weapons, your weapons manufacturer. I mean, the military wouldn't even get past the Pilots Federation, right? The Pilots Federation is going to run its own tests at its own proving grounds for weapon software. So even an in-game bug like that, if you describe it as an in-game feature or something, isn't going to work because there's just no. I mean, can you imagine the United States military taking a phalanx a phalanx point defense cannon on its aircraft carriers, which are used to defend the carrier from inbound missiles? Imagine those.
Yeah.
Imagine those just like the axis goes completely haywire on it, and you're in CIC with missiles coming at you, and suddenly, your phalanx cannons don't aim at missiles anymore. They're aiming off into La La Land. It's like, oh my god. You're going to lose crew, you're going to lose hardware, you're going to lose capability. I mean, it's just a disaster, right? The carrier could be sunk. I mean, the United States hasn't lost a carrier since World War II. The idea of an aircraft carrier, an American aircraft carrier being sunk is so alien. It just doesn't happen.
That's true. Yeah.
Can you imagine that, hearing that, terrorists took out the USS Ford or something, it would just be, what? How the hell did that happen? It's not a tiny little ship. It's a super carrier. It's like over a kilometer in length, and it's armored. It's got an armored double-breasted hull. It's got phalanx cannons, countermeasures, and its support fleet around it. There's just no way. I mean, you're supposed to have a sphere, both underwater and in the sky above it, that protects it from everything. It's a fortress.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't know. You're right, though. Like, even the military, they're
going to run it through its...
triple check.
Yeah, I mean, these companies, some of them are located here in the city I live in Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada. And any defense contracts that come through here, the government of Canada puts... People make jokes about, Canada's military and how tiny it is for a country its size, but it's still a very capable military in terms of, being able to deliver on what it needs to deliver on. And the idea that it wouldn't test any of this stuff and just buy wholeheartedly into a software vendor like coming along and say, yep, it works. It'll work under every condition that it was advertised. No. So yeah, you can't you can't have this, and you certainly don't want to. I mean, it would never get installed in our ships if it didn't work like this. Anyway, enough complaining about that. I was trying to get your feedback on the Pleiades and what's going on there.
Sure, yeah. I figured that's why you were really calling it. Yeah, it's obviously there are 3 new Guardian sites out there.
Right, and they're not really in the Pleiades. They're off what I think of as sort of the east end of the...
I see what you're saying.
They're sort of off the east end of the galaxy. The Pleiades itself, where I see you operating, where are you right now, actually?
Yeah, sorry, for whatever reason I was thinking about the Guardian thing. I'm actually in Maroc now. Okay, so you want Pleiades news. Basically, I've just been helping with the repairs for Obsidian Orbital.
And how's that going? Obsidian Orbital looks like it's coming close to completion on its repair work.
Yeah, thankfully. And actually, it seems with the update, it seems like they cut the supply needs in half, which helps out a ton.
That is good news, yeah. Well, they were pretty ridiculous. They were pretty ridiculous before, weren't they? I mean, they.
Oh my God, yeah.
It was taking forever. It seemed like it took like less than a month to tow an entire space station through hyperspace, mind you, Jameson Station, through hyperspace before they got it out to Colonia to establish that beachhead. And then, but for some reason it's going to take 2 months to fix Obsidian. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and actually, by my estimates, before the update, it would have been more like maybe 6 months to get it repaired. Because even, yeah, you have the demands, the numbers that you're looking at, but not just that. Some of the items, you have to go at least 250 light years away. So, you know, you got travel time, too, to factor in, and it's just, yeah.
That's crazy. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's not that these space stations aren't big. I mean, they're kilometers long. I think the Orbis class stations are 1.5 kilometers long or something like that. Between 1,000 and 1,500 meters, it sticks out in my mind. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of infrastructure and a lot of supply that goes into that, but if it takes in the year 3000 less than, you know, a month to build a space station from scratch, why is it taking 6 to repair it? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely glad they made it a more realistic number.
Now, when they build the space frame for these stations, of course, they're towing the frames out to the planets and then reassembling the remainder of the space station there. But the space frame itself gets assembled in a dry dock, the way that the Farragut class cruisers do, I'm sure, is what the counter argument would be. And there's just better equipment and better facilities for building space stations in a dry dock than there is you know, sitting in orbit around a planet just out in the vacuum kind of thing. And repairs for that reason, you know, 2 months seems a little bit more realistic if it was going to be 2 months, but I would even say 30 days maximum to fix a station with any serious attention.
Yeah, probably for the same reason that you mentioned, that, you know, it takes 30 days to build a station, so.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
and you still have most of the stations there. I mean, because the Thargoids come and damage it, they didn't incinerate the thing and blow it to Kingdom Come. They damaged part of a habitation ring. You know, they may have damaged a reactor or two, but they weren't able. They're kind of like kamikaze attacks, is my understanding, because every time you get a Thargoid near one of these starports, it sends out police ships endlessly until the Thargoids are either gone or until there are no more Thargoids. You know, like, there's never a complete loss for humanity there. The Thargoids just aren't equipped to deal with infrastructure that big.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they are talking about automated defense systems now with this Burbank or whatever bulwark proposal.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So what that is going to lead to, I don't know. I imagine some sort of enhanced game AI taking over control of the spacecraft and just, like, you know, better than even Elite rated. Using Taipan, swarms of Taipan or Condor class fighters coming down hard on a Thargoid. You know, the human answer to the Thargons.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And then just
that would be nice.
And then just peppering the hell out of any Thargoid craft that come in. And you literally have thousands of these things, so that anytime there's a Thargoid fleet threatening a station, you just, well, you just let them have it, kind of thing. The other thing that they could do, and I've speculated about this in some of my online webcasts, which seem to be lingering around the 20 viewer mark. I can't seem to break through any higher than 20 to 30 viewers, maximum, at a time. But I have like about a dozen regular subscribers so far on YouTube. I'm hoping to increase that number. Geez, that doesn't seem very easy. It's a very niche-oriented thing.
Yeah.
Is getting you know, the Jameson Station effort out in Colonia. They put a bunch of human players inside that thing at one point, and then used hyperspace to teleport across the cosmos. And not all at once, they did it in a series of jumps, but the humans were able to get out and then redock with the station again after. And the larger the craft, it appears, the more hyperspace drive reactor, FSD drives you can have on board the ship. So my question was, why not get something larger than the Farragut underway? Get something with a bigger gun, you know, a capital ship to capital ship weapon. Its purpose is to destroy, you know, large infrastructure in a single shot kind of thing. And the other purpose being, we're going to have a place to dock a bunch of human commanders, so that when we do a big jump, say to Thargoid home space, then we can take the fight to them. Because this is ridiculous. We're sitting here, we're sitting ducks. Humanity has no idea where the Thargoid home space is. And without any idea where their home space is, how can we respond in kind? We can't even...
Yeah, that's a good point.
We can't even retaliate. And now with the Guardians, we're hoping that there's like some sort of new weapon that will come out of that research. But I mean, it's hope upon hope. There's no guarantee of that. Although new Guardian Sentinels suggest the promise of having encounters with Guardians now that are a little more recent than 1 million years ago.
Yeah, a little bit with those skimmers that we found.
Yeah, Obsidian Ant was speculating that the Guardians might actually still exist. A lot of human players are speculating that they are still around somewhere. And I don't know where that comes from. I think again that's hope that we'll get an ally to fight the Thargoids. Except that don't forget there might be things out there in the universe worse than the Thargoids. Frankly,
yeah,
I don't even think the Thargoids come from this galaxy. There's some evidence to suggest the Guardians do come from the Milky Way, but there's no guarantee that the Thargoids do. They might be close. They might come from like the large Magellanic or small Magellanic clouds.
Right. Yeah, I remember you were mentioning that before.
Yeah. Well, that's just my own personal theory. I'm just backtracking along their path into human home space, into the core worlds. And if you continue going, you know, in the direction where they seem to be coming from, the only objects I see outside the galaxy, because humanity's been all through the Milky Way, we have found no evidence of Thargoid home space. So my theory is, again, they're not from this galaxy. They're from a neighboring galaxy, probably one of the dwarf galaxies that orbits the Milky Way. And there's nothing saying that you can't have an intelligent species evolve in a dwarf galaxy. There's no law written that says that. So why not? You know, just because there's no supermassive black hole at the middle of their galaxy doesn't mean that there aren't stellar nurseries, or there aren't interesting objects with heavy gravity wells or worlds that could give rise to an insectoid species like the Thargoids.
Yeah, it's a good possibility. I mean, they definitely seem to have advanced hyperspace travel.
And if you project again along that path, if you project along there, there's nothing outside the Milky Way except the LMC and the SMC. There's no, Triangulum is on a slightly different course past Andromeda, like it's on the other side of Andromeda. So there's no other galaxies in the local group, and nothing in our part of the universe that could account for the Thargoids except those two objects, in my view. Anyway, just my theory.
Yeah, it'd be pretty neat if that were the case. But yeah,
Probably a few years away yet from them deciding we're going to take the fight to the Thargoids in their own home space.
yeah, gotta find them first.
Gotta find them. Gotta get through these bugs.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Unfortunately.
So, are they damaging any more bases in that area in the Pleiades, or have they got pretty much all of them?
Actually, they left some behind, which is good, actually.
So the non-Aegis bases.
Actually, believe it or not, there are still some Aegis bases around. I was kind of surprised, really, that they didn't take out this one particular station, which is it's like a refinery, and we were using it to gather materials to help repair obsidian, and another commander and I were speculating that one would be next, but then next they're heading towards the bubble, so I guess they just decided it wasn't as important for whatever reason. So
yeah, this weapon that we keep hearing reports about that is disrupting energy fields at star bases. I don't know what the effect of that thing is. Like, if you go to the star bases, when you hear about this weapon being used on them, its operations seem normal, from what I could tell. Like, nothing seemed to be disrupted. Contrary to the news articles, I mean, it's said that, oh, well, it's on the brink of, falling apart. And it was as if the whole station was just going to fall out of the sky and into the planet it was orbiting, but it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bit of a puzzle. Unless someone else got a hold of some Thargoid technology, like a pirate organization or something, and just started, trying to be kind of mischievous with Thargoid weaponry. Firing at stations from far away where they couldn't be detected easily.
Yeah, maybe. Of course, you have the video that came out shortly after the first 3 stations were attacked, and it showed Thargoids coming in and attacking stations, but so
I guess, but it didn't explicitly say, oh, and the weapons being used on these stations first. And then, it seemed almost like to be a pointer that this is where we're coming next, but it never works out that way. They always choose a different target. So there's no way to predict where they're going to end up next. In fact, if you look at the 2 Thargoids right now and where they're headed into the core worlds, they've diverged slightly. They were making a beeline for the solar system, and now they've broken off. And they're headed in different directions. One is going into Imperial space, into the territory of Declan Petraeus, Senator Petraeus, and the other one is headed into actually my faction space, the faction that belongs to Dr. Pranav Antal and Li Yong Rui.
no kidding.
And I don't know what they're going to do, because these are 2 independent factions that don't really have any dealings with the Thargoids. Like, we're neither pro-Thargoid nor anti-Thargoid. We just don't have any, we just don't have any contact with them. So, what their interest would be in disrupting our bases, I don't know. I can imagine that our faction will take a renewed effort in destroying the Thargoids if they start attacking Antal's bases or Utopia bases.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
That will turn us against the Thargoids fairly quickly. But if they left us alone, I mean, our position is likely to remain neutral. I mean, short of an attack on Earth, which would be, you know, not well taken as the historical homeworld of humanity. But I don't think Earth is really at that much risk. There's quite a bit of hardware in orbit of Earth and Mars and in the solar system generally. So I don't know if you've ever been to Sol, but
yeah, I have actually. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
There's at least 2 constantly patrolling battleships in that one system, which you never see. So, and I imagine even the Empire would send Majestic class cruisers if need be to help defend the homeworld, but I don't know. They're not very pro-Federation. It is the seat of the Federation, and but see, this route through Patreus' space could take the Thargoids dangerously close to Capital, which is their homeworld.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the oldest human colonies as well. I don't know. Given the fact that Capital is also the site of the extinction of the Akinari species, I'm not as keen on defending Capital as I am on Sol, on Earth. But that's just an in-game sort of philosophy.
Yeah, that's understandable. I know if there was a fight in the Sol system, I'd probably be there.
Yeah, well, so would every other commander, and there'd be thousands of players. I could see Frontier not wanting to do that for that very reason. Because the game complexity would increase once you start having thousands of players logged into the same region of space. The server stress could become, well, severe.
Yeah, they could. That's true. I almost see it though, like, well, I guess it would be a bigger deal than, you know, like a community goal. So, yeah, I don't know. I still would like to see it. Personally, just because it'd be interesting, but
it might be interesting. But I think from a company perspective, Frontier is going to have to probably steer us away from that kind of an outcome. I just don't think it's practical. There are bandwidth limitations. There are also limitations on, even if they had the bandwidth to accommodate it, which in theory they could, I suppose, if everyone, you know, connected to the internet wirelessly, and the we're using Elon Musk's new Starcom satellite network to get our internet connections. Even if that wasn't a barrier, there would still be the problem of how to manage that many 3D objects in that tight of space. And as I said, it's not like they have to display it, but they do have to track it. And there's a lot of vectors, a lot of perspectives in a very tight space together. And as you probably can imagine, that's just demanding on computer performance. So, yeah, I don't see it. But I could be wrong. Maybe they have something planned. There are only a certain number of people with permits also allowed inside the solar system. It's not it's not a system that you can instantaneously gain permission to enter. You need to be at least ranked Chief Petty Officer in the Federal Navy to get in there. So I'm closing on midshipman ranking right now.
Oh, nice.
But well, I'd like to make Admiral before I'm, you know, old and gray.
Yeah, I know it takes a while, but I know you can get there, because I've seen some players, you know, any player that has a Fed Corvette, they at least have Rear Admiral, so I've seen quite a few of those around.
Yeah, the Corvettes require that's the last chip upgrade you get from the Federation as an option, and it's Rear Admiral. What do you got here? Finance statistics. So I have the Sol system permit, Beta Hydra permit, PLX 695 system permit, of course, the Sirius system permit, which is my parent company. The parent company that founded and Antal Panav's Utopia is the Sirius Corporation. So it's kind of like the home world of the faction. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a little in-game secret, and the Vega system permit.
Cool.
In theory, I should have the capital system permit as well, or the Arachnar system permit. Sorry, I don't, because the Empire is withholding my promotion to from outsider rank up to, I think it's Surf or something. Or Sub-Lord, or I don't know, Knight. You need to have some sort of imperial rank in the patronage system that they use to govern themselves. And I don't seem to. I'm not getting offers from the Imperial Navy to update my rank the way I used to. I've already hit the second rank, which is outsider, but beyond that, it just won't let me. I don't know if it's because I'm so highly ranked within the Federation, but I've met people who are highly ranked in the Federation and highly ranked in the Empire as well, and can visit both the solar system and Arachnar. And I just want to be able to visit Arachnar whenever the heck I want.
Yeah, that would be nice.
There's a couple of heavy G worlds in the Arachnar system. Arachnar 6 in particular has over 8 Gs.
Oh my god.
On the surface, so when you land your ship, you have to basically, like, if you're going to land a ship as heavy as an Anaconda, you have to do it using your main engines. You can't even use the docking computer, because the docking computer will hit the surface too hard and it'll smash your ship up.
Oh my god.
It just can't deal with that.
That's hilarious. I
mean, let's see, I weigh about 250 pounds right now, so like at 8 Gs, that's, what does that work out to, 500? I'm over a metric ton, well over a metric ton on
yeah.
Like, it's just, I mean, I don't even understand how you have to be incredibly fit to withstand 6 Gs on an ongoing basis. You're going to have trouble breathing. That's how hard it is to exist in 6 Gs, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't move.
That's a good point. Why put a base on a planet that's with that high of a G? I wonder. There's got to be a reason.
You need control of gravity in order to make it livable, or you just
yeah,
or it just isn't gonna be livable. And why the hell can't we visit the moon? That's another question. Like, we visit. We go to Earth's moon, and it was at one point. I know early shortly after Elite Dangerous was released in 2014, you could visit the moon and you could land on it, and now you can't. At some point they put a shield up around it, and now you can't land on it any more than you can any other planet with an atmosphere, except the moon doesn't have an atmosphere. It's the moon. It isn't big enough to have it.
I noticed that too.
What's that?
I went over there and I was just saying, I noticed that too. I was just like, what the heck? Exactly, because there's no atmosphere, so
it's not big or dense. It's not big or dense enough to have an atmosphere. So the only thing I can think of is that there's some sort of artificial shield or something that they've erected in its place, or they're not allowing us to land there for some sort of game reason, but I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't make sense.
Bit of a puzzle.
I guess, I don't know. I hope they explain it. I hope they let us land on there at some point.
Well, I see that happening. There's the likely rollout of atmospheric landings is coming this year, we believe. and by we I mean myself and a number of other players. Basically, there's been certain comments raised about Beyond the second or third release of it in Q4 of this year that suggests that atmospheric landings will finally be supported. When that happens, we're not sure. We don't think you'll be allowed to go everywhere on every inhabited planet in the galaxy. It wouldn't be practical. Like you pull out your SRV and merge with traffic in a futuristic city setting. It doesn't really it doesn't really make much sense. So the likelihood is that you will find cities like on worlds like in the Ross 128 system, which was the home system originally in Elite 2 Frontier, back in the days when it was on the Amiga series computers, which were among the very first 16-bit computers that were released to the open market. And they had really great graphics for their day. So I got Elite 2, and I was, a big fan because I played Elite 1 on the Commodore 64 as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you're talking to an old-timer now. And it was wireframe graphics, of course, on the C64. On the Amiga, they had introduced the whole idea of color, and not just a little bit of color, lots and lots of color. They had a grand total of 256 colors to choose from in their palette, so yeah, it was pretty amazing. Except, the Amiga, had 2 million colors, and now we're dealing with, I don't know, more than the human eye can differentiate anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But, regardless, in Elite 2 Frontier, the home system that you start in is Ross 128. It's home to 2 worlds that are named. One is called gas giant called Aster, and there's a moon around it called Merlin. Merlin had 3 cities on it that you could land at in that game, and these were dome cities with airports on the surface, right? And so you could land at the airports and you could interact with these airports, and they would offer services similar to those that you find on a lot of the airless worlds that we land at right now. The limited number of services there were. This is also happening in the year 3200 AD, back in the day of Trrium, and the hyperspace cloud, which you've heard the computer probably talk about.
Yeah.
Using the new, what's that name of that thing? Comvoice or whatever it is.
Yeah, you're talking about the Galnet voice, Covas.
Yeah. Covas, that's it. The Covas upgrade.
Okay.
So, anyway, that was what that was about. And back in those days, I have a male voice because I like the authoritative sound of him better than the. Although, have you listened to Celeste?
I have.
She sounds really sexy, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think that was the point. Yeah, I think that was the point there.
Anyway, it just sounds like the male voice reminds me of what's his name? The android that's in the more recent releases from the Alien series.
Oh, David?
Yeah.
I guess?
Yeah, the android named David. That's right.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I can see that. It's definitely a very deep male voice.
Yeah, very English, just like David, of course.
Yeah, that's true.
So, anyway, Celeste came off as a bit, I'm sure she's, for game AI, she's very intelligent, but she comes off as sounding very spinny. And she's speaking
some players might like that, I don't know.
I don't know, I guess they do. Depends how you like your girls. If you like them spinny and empty-headed, and that Celeste voice is pretty good at... Well, I shouldn't say she's empty-headed. She's just not very scientific. The last thing I could imagine her is in a set of spectacles with a white lab coat. You know. Outside of some sort of pornographic context, you know, where there's role playing going on or something. Anyway, yeah, she's just she has her little French accent there, and she sounds very very suggestive. Anyway, I might buy her. I don't know. I'm toying with the idea. I do like having different voices. But I would also like one with a North American accent. Having recently been the buyer of a new scooter in my real life, which has a Bluetooth interface into my cell phone. Problem with it is, though, it's made in the Orient, and I guess, I don't know what Oriental manufacturers do exactly when they're confronted with a problem like we need software that sounds like it's speaking English. But this one was programmed with a very thick, and guessing it's a Korean accent. It's certainly not Chinese, but it's an Oriental sounding accent, where the letter R is very, very hard to understand. So when they say the link is ready with the Bluetooth link is ready with blah blah blah, and it's just like, I haven't got any idea what you're saying. I know what you're saying because I could read the manual that came with the Google app. But unless that statement was there, I'd have no idea what the voice on my bike is telling me.
Oh my. So,
I mean, yes, everyone's entitled to their own interpretation of English and their own accents, but good God, and there is a standard pronunciation for most English words, and it's either, you know, English UK, North America, or North American, Canadian or American, or Australian or New Zealand. One of the top 5. And this is nothing like that. And Celeste has got her French accent, but I mean, luckily I'm from Canada, so the French accent is fairly common where I'm from, so.
So it's not as I guess
not a problem
tough
really
to understand. Yeah.
No. I mean, there's certainly parts of France where if they speak a flavor of French that I'm sure I get completely lost. But Parisian French, no. Most Parisian French I can probably grasp. Most. That being said, there are some parts of England where they speak flavors of English that I don't understand. It certainly sounds like English, I just haven't got any idea what the hell they're saying.
Yeah, I hear that. I guess I'm reminded of I guess the movie Snatch with Brad Pitt. Have you seen that movie? You know what accent I'm talking about?
Yes,
oh my
I believe so.
Yeah, I can't even remember what I heard kind of accent it was, but it's really hard to understand.
There are very thick and very pronounced American accents, even in North America, where technically I suppose I'd get lost. I mean, you get a thick enough Bostonian or a New York accent, and I might get lost because I'm not from the East Coast originally. I'm from out west. So I can get lost by these things if they're too thick. But, as a general rule, this is just so far off the wall. I don't know, you have to hear my bike talking to understand just how completely off base it is. But it drove me kind of crazy because, like, it isn't that hard to get voice simulations of North American accents. Like, you'd really have to be doing things on the cheap to not, literally by yourself, not to have it sound like this. And it didn't sound anything remotely English, in my judgment. Anyway.
But you like the scooter, I hope.
The scooter itself is fine. It's a little bit, it's a new this year from Daymac. It's called a Chameleon, and it looks very decorated. It almost looks like a circus act. But every feature on it, despite its appearance, has a safety application that I, as a scooter driver, know why it's there. The pinstriping that lights up, so I mean there's lights along the side of the thing and all over the place really, it's like one big light bulb, is there to let drivers know that you're there and so they can see you in the mirror. A lot of the other scooters I've driven don't have that kind of a feature, and I've nearly been run over a number of times because people here drive absolutely nuts. I've been hit by 2 cars. One of them I mean, I don't think the pinstriping would have made any difference. He opened his door when I was driving on the right-hand side in a bike lane. There are designated lanes for bicycles on the right-hand side of the road, and this guy got out of his car in a bike lane.
Yeah, not too smart.
And the cop, and what drove me even more crazy is the cops, when they showed up, they shook their head, clucked their tongues, agreed it was unfortunate, and there was no charges going to be laid, because that's just a road sign. It doesn't mean anything. There's no law saying that it's illegal to open your door in a bike lane.
Oh.
If you're in a car, you see.
No. Guess I didn't think about that.
Someone didn't cross an I or dot a T or something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it wasn't very thoroughly thought through anyway, so.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
So,
but,
it looks like we've got about an hour and 2 minutes left before the update happens. So I'm going to get back to I'm hunting pirates on the NLTT 6655 system here.
Nice.
I've got 2 more to massacre before I can go claim my million credit reward for doing so.
Cool. Almost there.
I'd invite you, but you're 300 light years away, so it'll take you just about that long, well, probably about half that time to get to this star system.
Yeah, a little bit. It's all good. I'm actually doing my own bounty hunting myself, trying to get really just not just credits but rank in the federal and imperial sides.
Which one are you more highly ranked in?
Right now, the federal, and it's been my main power pretty much since the beginning of the game, or not the game, but since they had power play anyway. And you know, I started with Zachary Hudson, and then did the Federation, and
well, that's right. You
soul permit.
You did the power play with Zachary Hudson. That's how I started, and I swear to God, it was like the whole universe up and turned against me when I first started that. Everyone wanted to kill me. Now,
yeah, it's up. Good.
I'm just gonna say I've just got found a mission target. There he is, locked on. We are engaged in the interdict. Class 6A interdictor should be good enough.
Wow.
I don't really have to worry about this anymore. People, even human players, can try to pull out of this thing. It just locks onto them and reels them in like fish. You're not going nowhere.
Yeah, that's a big interdictor. That's funny, dude. Currently, I just have like a size 2, but most of my space is just going towards you know, like a shield cell, a shield generator, all that jazz. A whole reinforcement.
Yeah, basically, I try to get the best shields out of it, and I do have engineering enhanced shields. He's pulling out! Oh my god, this vulture is pulling out. How is he doing that? I've never had an NPC escape before.
Oh.
That's very... Hang on a second. Oh, there he goes. There he goes. And... winner. But I've never had to go that close before.
What are you flying in?
What's that?
What are you flying in?
Python.
Oh, it's still the Python?
Yeah, the Python. Python is the most versatile, and I think it's just best all-around ship. It certainly beats the new Chieftain. I don't know if you've had a chance to fly the Chieftain, but I blew the hell out of a Chieftain in a recent fight.
Really?
Yeah, in a Python it wasn't a problem. Took him down. I think it's supposed to be a cost-benefit kind of thing with the Chieftain. Oh, dear me. This guy is actually proving to be annoying. I've got his shield slightly down compared to mine. But on the whole, he's pulling off a pretty stunning little victory here. Let's just see about that. No, I just fragged him a whole bunch of times. And he's getting hit, 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 hit. He's almost done. The shields are down.
Target shields offline.
Target shields are offline. Friendly ships have come in to assist. He's down to 56% hull. My shields are almost down. He is now taking hits from the... Oh. Taking damage. He's hit me at 97%. He's at 1%. He is destroyed. He managed to crack... He cracked my canopy, but only did 97% damage, or hit me down to 97% damage. Wow.
Goodness.
He was rated an expert flying a vulture. The vultures can be surprisingly good.
Yeah, that's true. Especially if they have railguns. Those tend to be very annoying.
Yeah, well, he got my shields down, and then he started attacking my systems, but he was not able to complete the kill. My shields are now reassembling. Contacts show chemical processors, compound shielding, worn shield emitters, and flawed focus crystals. Precipitated alloys and shielding sensors as debris, none of which is valuable to me. I'm guessing those flawed focus crystals came out of his drive. They've been cracked. The chemical processors used to mean something to me, they don't anymore.
Oh yeah? Oh, just... You don't need them anymore?
No. Well, technically I don't really need anything anymore because I can go to the trade broker, or one of the new brokers in bits and pieces. And my shields have just reassembled, and I now have 2 rings of shields back up. I can't believe he actually hit me. That's just astonishing.
Cargo scoop retracted.
Like, I'm just stunned by that, like a vulture. Advanced discovery scanners, yeah, cockpit canopy at 78%.
Wow.
I don't know how he did that much damage, but you said he might have had a rail cannon, so...
Oh, I'm just saying, I know when they do have railguns, they can be pretty formidable. So.
Yeah, well, I better find a base so I can repair this thing, and then we'll.
Cannot comply.
Okay, and we're leaving behind. Headed to Kotab Enterprise, a Coriolis starport in this system. Equalizing power distribution and engaging jump drive. Super freezing
Shift
game.
drive charging. 4, 3.
I was gonna say earlier about the ROS 128 system. Merlin has a few cities on it, and so did Earth. Earth had 4. New York, London, Moscow, and Tokyo, I think. And you could, those were the 4 main spaceports. You could land at any one of them and get services. The moon had a couple, then there were the 3 star bases that you see in orbit. I mean, there was like just infrastructure like crazy. But you couldn't go just anywhere you want to on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's how I see them implementing it here again. You'll be allowed to land at designated points on the planet system, but if you can see your house, don't expect to be able to land your Python in your front yard or anything. You imagine them pulling Google Map, like going and connecting to Google, pulling a map off there, real time, so you can see your house, and you just land the Python there.
Yeah, that would be weird. the other, of course, you know, this takes place, 3304. So I guess I don't know. You can get creative with it, though.
I'm expecting the layout. Yeah, but I'm expecting the layout of most of the cities to change in 1,000 years. I mean, there's not very many places left where if you go back 1,000 years ago to the year, 1018 AD, where the streets are exactly the same. Even in downtown London, like Londinium, which was a Roman fort, I think. No, well, it graduated from a Roman fort to the English capital by now, 1,000 years ago. But the street layouts, while they may have looked still somewhat Roman, they were definitely already in changing the layout of the city quite considerably. And of course, now if you go into downtown London, it is completely different than it was 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Yeah. So, yeah, that says something right there. Who knows? But it would be interesting to see how much they do, how much we will get to see. So.
Well, you could always travel to London if you really want to for one of the elite get-togethers. And
yeah, that's true.
It's one of the cheapest cities in the world to travel to. And you're an American citizen, I presume?
Yeah.
So you should have no problem visiting the UK whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's a fairly straightforward endeavor. I know I even have a criminal record in Canada, and as a result of possession charge 10 years ago. For a tiny amount of a substance that my country considers illegal, but is about to legalize.
Yeah, that's how that goes.
And the Americans will never, ever, the border officials in the United States will never forget it. It will always be part of the border crossing database. They may let me back into the United States, but right now it would be like without special dispensation from Homeland. I can't actually just go to the border and cross into the United States anymore.
Oh man,
that's just how it is. It works that way both between Canada and the U.S. and vice versa. In fact, it's harder for Americans to enter Canada, I'm told, than it is for Canadians to enter the U.S.
I don't know. Yeah, the only thing I do know I only went to Canada once, and it was part of an Alaskan cruise, actually. I sailed out of Seattle, and I mean, we went to Alaska first, but on the way back, we stopped through Victoria.
Yeah.
And it was super easy. I just walked right by the customs officers to go into Canada, but then coming back, we spent about an hour in screening to get back into the U.S. So I don't know if maybe that was just because it's a cruise ship, and that, you know,
maybe
that was one of our stops, and then coming back to the U.S. was like our final stop, and so, you know, maybe that's why. But
well, the U.S. has its own rules for admitting, you know, like anyone who's been on a ship or, you know, outside the country for any length of time. And I think the same applies to Canada as well. If I left the country for, like, you know, 5 years and then tried to re-enter Canada, I mean, yes, I have a constitutional right as a Canadian citizen to re-enter my country. They can't say no. Because I can, unlike in the U.S., in Canada, I can never have my citizenship taken away. There's no precedent for it. It never happened. No one's ever had their Canadian citizenship revoked, as far as I know. It may have happened, but I don't think it has. Anyway, so once you're a Canadian, naturalized or otherwise, you are Canadian forever. And the only exceptions would be if the country, the third country in question, says no, you can't have dual citizenship. Then you have to explicitly renounce your Canadian citizenship, and there's paperwork to be filed on that.
right.
But that's
Yeah, I think that's similar to the U.S. Yeah.
I think if you're born in the States, you're automatically an American, or if you're born to parents who are in foreign service. There was a chance at one point the Americans were going to get a Canadian Republican president, because he grew up in Calgary, Alberta, which is sort of like the United States anyway, because it's populated by third-generation American Texas Rangers who were invited by the Canadian government in the early 1900s to come live and populate southern Alberta under promises of free land. That's why Calgary has a stampede. The Calgary Stampede, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
It sounds vaguely familiar, but that's interesting.
It's like one of the most, it is like the most American Canadian city, you know, and tries to be. Anyway.
That's awesome. Wow. I wouldn't have thought, you know, I don't know. I guess Texas Rangers, I mean, they're pretty, you know, they're pretty well regarded.
Texas got settled a lot earlier, you know, about 100 years earlier.
Right.
And so there were a lot of Texans who were, you know, without land. And they wanted to start ranches of their own. And the only real opportunity many of them had was, you know, come north.
Yeah.
Here's some free land. You live here, you become Canadian citizens, and you work the land. You can raise cattle, you can do, you know, whatever the hell you want. So they did. and so we have a province that's populated by displaced Texans.
Wow. Actually, it kind of does make sense, you know, in a way, because you're right. Like, when Texas was being settled, it's kind of the same people with the same mentality, you know, they're trying to find land to, you know.
You love the mentality that was
farm
behind the thoughts of the Canadian politicians was this. There was still concern after the War of 1812, which had just happened, you know, not even 100 years before. There was still some concern that the Americans had not let go of manifest destiny, and that your country would get a demagogue or someone in charge who would want to turn his attention north and come conquer Canada. So the thought was, well, we'll recruit all these Texans who are independently minded anyway. We'll come have them settle in Alberta with promises of free land and being Canadian citizens, and then we can just stretch the Canadian border right across the 49th from Manitoba all the way to British Columbia. thereby containing manifest destiny.
I see.
Right? So, what we think of now as the continental United States, Canada had a shape in framing it because there was worry that, you know, there wasn't a United Nations, but there was a League of Nations at that point, that the other countries of the world would fail to recognize Canada's claim to what was then called Rupert's Land unless it was settled by settlers. And the only way to get settlers quickly there was to literally bring them north. So at very little cost, the Canadian government was able to use Americans who were Americans but independently minded, and repatriate them as Canadians and use them to contain any ambitions that American politicians had about turning Canada, like breaking through the 49th and laying claim to territory that Canada thought of as being its own.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a good point.
And it worked.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you look back. We were pretty crazy back then, I guess.
No, it wasn't. It had nothing to do with crazy. There was no one there. I mean, why not take it over? From an American perspective, you would just look at it. There's a bunch of empty land there. Why not come and take it over? You know, regardless of what regardless of what they thought in Ottawa, you know, who cares? You know, but. And anyway, there was still this latent feeling of, although the Americans had made great strides under Benjamin Franklin to repair the damage from the Civil War that broke the United States away from England. Right after that war was finished, there was huge efforts to pacify with King George again and normalize relations. And of course, one of the first things the American government did was make an embassy and send it to London so that they could have relations with England.
Yeah, I remember you were mentioning that before.
Well, it made sense from their perspective. I mean, it may not have been well advertised, but I mean, on the one hand, you had the populace. You had just finished, you know, if you're an American politician, you had just finished getting the population all pissed off with Britain, to the point of making it, you know, rebel against the crown and having it go independent its own way. And now you're suddenly setting up an embassy in London. Well, why would you do that right away? I mean, you should wait a few years, some would say. But London was still being, don't forget, England was a world power at that point. America still had ambitions for trade and commerce, and all kinds of things were going on. You needed England, so of course you're going to have an embassy there. It's going to be your #1 priority, I would think.
Yeah.
Politics makes strange bedfellows. That's the lesson of history. In the end. But
that makes sense, I guess.
What's that?
I was just saying, I guess it makes sense in that regard, since they were, as you said, basically the capital of the world, or at least a big world power, and we just fought a tough war to get independence, so it makes sense to try and smooth it over as quickly as possible and set up so that we wouldn't have to go through that again. And then, of course, set up our future.
Well, and no one could see the Civil War coming. That was like a total surprise. So, I mean, England was abolishing slavery. Part of the American... I don't know to what degree this participated in it or exactly what the timing was. My impression is that England had abolished slavery and that the slave owners in the southern U.S. had just kind of ignored the directive, and the Crown was unable to enforce it. But basically, most European colonial powers by that point, by the late 1700s, had abolished slavery. Except maybe Portugal. Couple of and maybe the Spanish. I don't know what the Spanish slavery was exactly. But there was still the Spanish-American War, and then the Civil War to come in the future.
Yeah.
sadly, I don't know that much about either. Well, I do know a fair bit about the civil, but probably not as much as you.
Yeah, they do kind of teach that quite a bit in our schools. So yeah, it was you know, the interesting thing about it is there are kind of two sides on it as far as what really started the Civil War, the American Civil War.
Yeah.
And technically they're both true. I mean, one side, the one you hear about the most is about slavery.
But it's about the economics of slavery, isn't it? It's not about slaves conceptually, in the sense that, oh, what a terrible thing slavery is. It's more like how effective is it, and does the federal government have the right to regulate it?
Yeah, in a way. But of course, the southern states, they seceded because they felt like they weren't being represented well enough in Congress. I felt like the North had basically taken over, sort of, and
pushing
that was part of it. The other part is because basically the North congressmen were trying to pass this law to make it so that any new state that comes about in the West would have to be a free state.
Yeah.
And the South was like, well, you know, that infringes on state rights, which is mentioned, you know, the Constitution, that every state, well, basically, yeah, they didn't want the federal government to get so much power as to that. To decide whether it's going to be a slave state or not. And so that's pretty much what divided them. It was, yeah, I can see the economic part, but I think a lot of it, too, it was also philosophical. There were a lot of abolitionists, and including Abraham Lincoln was actually abolitionist, even though, you know, he wasn't directly advocating it for his platform. But a lot of people knew that he kind of had the abolitionist sentiment. And so that was part of the reason why the Civil War, like the southern states seceded right after Abraham Lincoln got voted in. And they were like, okay, this is that. We know we're not going to be represented fairly now, so we're pulling out. And that's basically what I learned, anyway, in history class.
Yeah, I got a lot out of listening to, you know, American media or American perspectives on the Civil War from television, various PBS programs and so on. It must have been a terrible war, as bad as the War for Independence from England got, which my own family, that was our last contact in my family with the United States. Everyone fled north because they had come to the 13 colonies from on the paternal grandfather's side. They had come to the 13 colonies from England, seeking, you know, a lack of religious persecution and new opportunities for business and practicing their trade as craftsmen. And when the crown started taking hits, initially they had sided with the crown, and they got known wherever they were living at the time for that reason, and it made it difficult to live. There was a lot of persecution of the loyalists in the United States during that period. So the last contact they had, that my family had with the United States, was really there. And then everyone left because they fled to Canada, not because they weren't like chased out of the United States. There wasn't like crowds of people with pitchforks and torches burning, you know, trying to get rid of them, but they were made to feel unwelcome. And it became very, you know, from a business perspective, despite the fact they actually had, you know, they were competent tradespeople and knew how to do things, they were having trouble selling their services to other people around them because so many were rebelling. They were rebels.
Yeah.
Plus, they did have a loyalty to the crown inherently. There was just that belief that, you know, this wasn't a fight that needed to be fought. with England that independence would come, eventually. And it probably would have, but it would have meant a very different United States than the one we have today, if that had happened.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I imagine if we didn't go that route, we would be part of the Commonwealth, I guess.
You'd have you'd still be a superpower, but you'd have a prime minister, you'd have a parliament like Canada does. I mean, it would be very familiar. We might even be part of the same country. I mean, we both would have been part of British North America. The English may have just seen fit to just manage the whole thing centrally, and Queen Victoria could have named Washington instead of Ottawa as the capital for Great Britain in North America, and divested all the powers that she had divested in London to the Parliament in Washington.
Yeah, although if I remember correctly, I think originally Congress was, let me think, I guess that would be an interesting question, like if it remained part of the crown, because I know when we declared independence, initially our Congress was in Philadelphia, but
oh, that's right. Washington was contrived, wasn't it? It was on the Potomac.
Yeah, Washington was. It was basically designed by the founding fathers.
That's right.
To be the new seat of the capital because they needed. They saw that here's this land. It's undeveloped. We could design an entire capital.
Yeah.
So that's what they did.
That's right. So it might have been. See, Queen Victoria, what isn't known to the Americans, but probably bears out some thinking on this question, is that if we had like North America being completely dominated by one, overriding English power, a colonial power, then let's say that Canada and the U.S., what we now call Canada and the U.S., had been part of the same country. That would have included Quebec. The Plains of Abraham probably still would have happened, like the historical circumstances for it were all still perfectly valid. That was the battle at which the English General Wolfe and French General Montcalm fought the decisive battle that decided whether or not Quebec was going to be part of Canada or not. After that battle, England decided that, given the population of Canada, of what was then called Upper Canada, Ontario, and Quebec at that time, were roughly equal. So there would be a capital created in Ottawa, the city I'm in right now, along the Quebec-Ontario border. And this would help balance the country so that there was a logical place for the seat of central authority to rest. And if you had incorporated the United States population into it, that may not have been the decision that was rendered. But the Plains of Abraham still would have happened outside of Quebec City. Quebec City would have still had, fallen to the English under pretty much identical circumstances, and you still would have you'd still have the Francophone question. The other thing that would not have happened, it was never part of Anglophone policy, Anglo policy in British North America to dominate or to culturally root out the French. The Americans adopted the idea, the concept of a melting pot. All the new peoples who came to the United States would be blended together. Canada had to adopt a different model. We adopted something called multiculturalism, which is a 20th century word that describes what ended up happening as an alternative. Basically, we will absorb as many people as we can from anywhere on the face of the earth. Some will be allocated to Quebec, and some will be allocated to the rest of Canada, and they're spread out roughly equally, which is one of the reasons Quebec gets, well, not half, but, just under half of all the immigrants that come into the country initially. they can settle in Toronto or Montreal typically. Toronto's usually the more popular choice. It's one of the reasons the city has grown so dramatically in the last several years. But it's now cresting well over 5 million people. Montreal is over 3. So, I mean, those are the 2 largest Canadian cities. And then there's Vancouver, of course, on the west coast, which has been a favorite place for Oriental peoples to go call home if they move to Canada. And everyone is embraced. They don't have to even speak English at first. That is something that is incorporated over time, but you do have to speak one of the 2 official languages eventually. But so goes the thinking. You have to speak either English or French. Doesn't matter which one. Pick one. You're far better off with English because it's the world's language of trade. But you can pick French. You can pick French if you want to. If it's a second language kind of thing. Whereas the Americans, you know, if you encounter in Canada's immigration facilities, there are language. There are for some services you can ask for assistance in a variety of different languages. That wouldn't happen in the United States, and that's where the philosophy might be most noticeable.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I was just thinking back on what you were saying, melting pot versus multicultural. So I guess just trying to, how does it differentiate? Because
the idea was that if you're a melting pot, the official language of the United States is English, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to become common to every person in the United States. In Canada, we just don't have that opportunity. There never has been. On the council that governs Canada, right after the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, there was a council of 11 that was founded in order to govern both Lower and Upper Canada. 5 seats for Ontario, 5 for Quebec, and 1 would carry the deciding vote, typically alternating between the 2. Eventually, that became more generalized into a House of Commons. By 1867, Canada becomes founded with Confederation. There are four founding provinces: New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Upper Canada, and Lower Canada, or Ontario and Quebec. And then the territory begins to expand. Eventually, Manitoba joins the fray with the Louis Riel Rebellion in 1870 is when Manitoba joined, and that became the fifth province. And on it goes until 1949. Newfoundland and Labrador are incorporated finally on acquisition from England, and Canada becomes completed as we know it today. In fact, I just remembered one of our founding fathers just died at the end of the last century.
No kidding.
Because Newfoundland, because the first premier of Newfoundland, I think he died at 101 or something. He was really old. But he died, in the 1990s at some point.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's crazy to think about.
But if you add Puerto Rico as a state, you basically have another founding father.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Puerto Rico becomes the 51st state in the American fabric, and then at that point, and it really should be a state, I think, shouldn't it? I don't know what the view is of the American public, but I think it should be a state now.
Yeah, I haven't really looked too much into it, but from what I understand, I think the argument against it is, I think then they would have to be taxed more or something like that. But at the same time,
They want to be a state there, though.
Yeah, I think so, because they get more rights. They get the rights of being a state instead of just a territory.
Right, and they're out in the Caribbean like that. Like, I understand that, you know, there's a certain expense associated with it, but the Mount Arecibo Radio Observatory, which is my personal pet project for Puerto Rico, is out there, and because it's a U.S. territory and not a U.S. state, it's vulnerable to hurricanes and natural disasters. And yet it is the single largest...
Like we saw this past season, yeah.
Right? It's the single largest radio telescope on the surface of this planet, and what's happened to it? We're not really sure. It may have power, it may not. We're not sure when it's coming back online. You know, like, it's ridiculous, you know, but
yeah.
I mean, the most powerful country on earth should be able to afford to fix it. But Trump has dropped the ball, and with so many things, but Puerto Rico is definitely numbering up there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but yeah, like, Trump is proving to be the president that I think a lot of us were afraid of, kind of. But, you know, those that voted for him are, I'm sure, disappointed, and then the rest are just like, wow, this is
exactly what we thought was going to happen. Yeah. It's unfortunate. What's really unfortunate about is what he's done to the office. Like, the fact that you can have, you know, you hoped that the American presidency was immune from demagogues. That you couldn't have, you know, it used to be thought of that you could never have an Adolf Hitler, and I'm not saying Trump is like Hitler, but you could never have an Adolf Hitler type personality take the presidency, right? That would just be unthinkable. And as unthinkable as it might be, we have to consider the possibility now, in the harshness of the reality Trump has brought us, that that could actually happen. I mean, you know, that a population, you know, the majority does have the right to dictate its own course. Absolutely, I believe that 110%. But at the same time, as much as we may share democratic values and democratic views, the majority is also sometimes wrong. And it's the right of the United States to be wrong. We can be as wrong as anyone else. But it's more difficult for the rest of the world when you hold the position the United States does. Like, you can't,
that's a really good point.
Can't be wrong. It's one of the reasons I feel so strongly about getting a world presidency going, like a world federation, where every country could join, have a certain number of votes allocated, you know, et cetera, in a federal system, and we would elect a president of Earth, literally. But
yeah,
and it's going to be an American sometimes, and sometimes it's not, you know. But that idea that, you know, America would have to just donate armed forces to the New World Order, and that you wouldn't have a military of your own anymore. That whole idea would just never fly. And it has to do with nationalism and patriotism and a bunch of other isms. And it's not going to work, unfortunately, but we do have the capacity to turn this planet, I still firmly believe, into an absolute paradise if we wanted to, but we would just have to lose a few of the notions that we currently hold as being taken for granted, such as my country is always is paramount when it's really the planet that's paramount.
Yeah.
Your first loyalty should be to Earth, in my view, as opposed to your particular nation. Yes, you can still be loyal to your nation. Absolutely, you should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, honestly, because I mean, we're all on this planet, and especially at this stage, with how technology is and
we're
the
so
economy,
interdependent with one another.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the other thing Trump has shown me is that we're so dependent on the United States for so many things. It can't just bow out and say, well, no, we're not going to do this right now. It's like, what do you mean you're bowing out? No, you have to. It's just too important for the United States to be involved in the things it's been involved with historically for it to say we're going to take a break on this because it costs too much money, or the people don't want it, or I'm not president for the whole planet. Well, then my attitude is, well, that's precisely the problem. Not that Trump isn't president of the whole planet. The problem is that we don't have a president of the whole planet. We need one. And it's not going to be Trump. Besides which, if every human being is voting, I believe there would be a firewall against having people like Trump in power. To some degree.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, you can just look at how every world leader sees Trump, and I don't blame him for it, but I'm just saying, like, how he's viewed around the world. So, yeah, there's no doubt if there were a planetary president, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I know. It's hard. The other thing is, we could go with a prime minister or some sort of parliamentary council to run the planet. I mean, we don't have to necessarily go with a federal system, but I think a republic makes the most sense because it's got a lot of power to it, and you need that kind of power if you're going to deal with the kinds of threats that we're dealing with right now. I can only see so far in front of me. I can't look, 300-400 years down the road and say that a parliamentary system might not work or might not be better. Maybe it will. But
yeah, it just depends. I think the other thing that I keep in mind is what's going on with the EU right now, with the UK, the Brexit, because that was kind of...
Well, that's true as well. Both Trump and Brexit came at the same time. You had two of the world's chief powers, major powers, both take a giant step backward in terms of allowing what they wanted their politicians to have the power to do. But you can't stop your politicians from exercising representative power. That's what they're there for. Like, I don't know what everyone thought that they were going to get out of the deal. Exactly. I know that they're tired of it. I understand that. I get it, but it doesn't change reality just to have someone like Trump in power. He's not going to fix anything. He's going to make it a lot worse. And yes, it can always get worse.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree. That's the other. Well, of course, I was going to get. I guess I'm going to say it, but yeah, like one of the big things Trump has always been saying is he's going to bring back jobs. And
what kind of jobs? Are they going to be high-paying jobs or low-paying jobs? There's lots of different ways to put that question. I don't see the United States as being particularly having an aptitude for working in a service sector economy, and something tells me Trump does see things a little bit that way. So.
Yeah, I don't know, man. All I know is, just like one big example is the whole coal miners. He said he's going to bring back
clean coal
miners. But it's so funny because, like, our economy is moving away from coal anyway.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing he can do.
Yeah, I know. Why did he even try to break away from the environmental policies that were adopted by Obama? I mean,
right.
It was almost a spiteful reaction, it seemed to me, and one born of an old man who was used to having the world operate the way it did in the 1970s, because that's when he had it good or something, and he's trying to reclaim it or something. I don't know. Obviously, it's not that simplistic, but...
Well, I think that at least points out probably the main thing is, he's a business tycoon, and he's going to do what he sees is best for the bottom line, no matter what that is. And unfortunately, that's what he seems to be doing. He just really he cares way too much about businesses and how they operate, rather than looking at the implications, the
but we have
side effects.
We have a conservative element here in Canada as well that also looks at the bottom line. But there's different ways to look at the bottom line. You can look at the bottom line in the very near term, and you can look at it in the very long term. Right? And Trump is looking at things, like I said, with service sector economies and jobs, and having coal miners run into little dirt tunnels and things. Like it just seems it just seems to me like, we're talking about two completely different visions for the whole world, and he's got one vision that does, granted, it might put food on the table and keep the needs there, but we already have that. What we're looking for here is to make things better than they are, because this is not as good as they can get. They can get a hell of a lot better than this.
Yeah.
And he's just not capable of even looking at the world in terms where you can see it being a lot better than this. I don't think. And that's my main issue with him. It's a vision at the top. Of any corporation I've ever worked for, the vision isn't there. It's very, very hard to even know what goal is it you're reaching for. Like, what's the next branch? What's the next limb on the tree that we're going to use to climb? You can't set goals or priorities or get momentum behind policy decisions that you're making. And again, on the environmental question, he just seems to have completely dropped the ball. He's out of step with the world, and he doesn't care what the rest of the world thinks. Why? He's not president of the world. He's president of the United States. And as long as he can convince the people of the United States that, we can have clean coal. Well, first of all, you can clean up the coal. First of all, that part is true, but you can never have completely clean coal. It's a hydrocarbon, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. Well, the other crazy thing about it is I heard that he helped pass or maybe repeal legislation that kept companies from dumping pollutants into into the water or something like that.
That's not his water they're dumping into, so what the hell does he care?
I know, right? But, that's what I hear is he's like, oh, well, that placed a burden on the companies. I'm like, well yeah.
Yes, it's supposed to.
Of course it's a burden, but would you rather, have, more money, or would you actually like to have good drinking water? So.
Yeah, the long-term strategy, no short-term strategy is going to work out if you're not there in the long term to enjoy it, because you've been poisoned by your drinking water in the first place.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Like, I don't want to spend the 7 remaining years of my worthless life, working in McDonald's, being poisoned slowly to death by drinking water and carbon dioxide pollutants in the atmosphere.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
It seems like every American I talk to about this, it's usually a one-on-one conversation, mind you, but every bloody one I've ever spoken to, it's like they swear to God they voted Democrat last time, and there's some sort of secret club of Republicans that's voting somewhere. I honestly don't know where the Republicans get majorities from. Like, am I just speaking to the wrong Americans?
That's possible.
There's some kind of conspiracy somewhere. Like, the Democrats aren't blameless and pure either. They're just like, they're politicians like every And Trump calls himself, "I'm not really a politician." Yes, you are. You're president of the United States. You're holding the chief political seat on this planet. You're a damn politician now.
Yeah. And he played it up, during the campaign. That's how he got so many people on board. I mean, he was telling at least a good portion of the Americans what they wanted to hear. And to kind of go back to your thing, like, one thing I noticed is most of the Americans that support the Republicans, and especially Trump, are more in the rural areas out in the country, or or in the factories, for example. But most of the urban centers they were voting Democrat, and
yeah, the institutions of higher learning tend to be Democrat, but I mean, typically the Democrats are seen as being left-leaning. They're more friends to labor and to unions and these other artifices that never really gained a firm foothold, in my view, in American political theater. And yet, someone voted Republican, I'm sure. I mean, even if there was like massive ballot box stuffing by Republican agitators, it would still amount to being way too many Republican votes to justify what I'm hearing from people I speak to. So I'm a little suspicious of this institution you guys have, the Electoral College. I've said this before to you, but
yeah, I know we talked about it before, but yeah, that was one thing that came out from this election is, the states with the highest number in the end, they actually have more rural areas, and so it was just how it ended up stacking up.
I know, but it was interesting that you told me it was instituted as a measure to prevent scenarios like Trump from gaining power, and it turned around and backfired anyway.
Well, that's because the states usurped the original intent of the Electoral College by forcing the electoral people to vote based on how the state voted, or else they'll be kicked out and replaced. And so it basically made it pointless to have the Electoral College, and now it's just a weird way that the votes end up getting counted.
Well, that just means that the delegates from an individual state that has such rules would become effectively just rubber stamps.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah, that's what I mean.
You get selected from party lists as a delegate, and then you're sent to this convention, and the convention.
Yeah, you better vote based on the state, or otherwise,
otherwise
we'll
they
pick someone that will vote.
That's right, and the state has the right to suspend your votes if you don't vote the way that you want. So the way they want. So
yeah, it's ridiculous.
You can't. I know. You can't not vote the way that it was already decided. It's kind of like the Canadian Senate, except our Senate actually does a little bit of meaningful work once every 4 years. It's the Electoral College doesn't seem to do any work whatsoever.
Unfortunately.
It's paid out of, there's money allocated to it every 4 years, and they do their thing, and it's exactly what's expected of them. They can't deviate.
Unfortunately.
The Senate of Canada, on the other hand, actually can deviate from Parliament. Yes, the Prime Minister raises bloody hell when they do, but they're appointed, they're not elected, blah, blah, blah. And he goes into this tirade about it. Provinces are allocated senators in Canada based on population, but occasionally a Senate body has seen fit to overrule the House of Commons, and if that happens, they're supposed to be the House of sober second thought. But because they're appointed and not elected, they're not supposed to do that. So, yes, they have the power, but no senator in his right mind wants to actually put that to the test, because they know that the House of Commons will outlaw them if it ever push came to shove. They'd just be eradicated. But there is talk of reforming the Senate periodically here, so there is the hope, at least at some point, the Senate will actually become an elected body.
Yeah.
Of course, it would
Well, at least there's hope, I guess.
it would take a constitutional amendment, though, that requires that Quebec be brought in. And anytime that Quebec is and the word constitution is used in Canada, people get very nervous that they'll threaten to separate and actually ruin the economy again. So no one wants to broach this. No one wants to broach this subject. It's become something of a economic football. Anyway, looks like we're about to be cut off here momentarily.
Yeah, I see that.
So,
well, we'll have to pick this up again later.
Message.
Yep, I'm going to call it a night. On that note, I've just cashed out my last mission. I think it's my last one. If it's not, I guess then I lose because... Oh! I didn't massacre all my pirates. But I did get 1 million credits. Yes, I did get over 1 million credits for turning 2 sets of passengers in. What happened? Oh yeah, and I have a day left to actually massacre the pirates. So I have one more pirate, 1 day, 7 hours, and 24 minutes to kill him. And with that, I'm sure I can manage that. So with that, we will call it a night. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for listening to me ramble on endlessly about this.
No, yeah, I enjoy the discussion.
The socio-historical... The socio-historical context of Canada-U.S. relations is always an interesting topic.
For sure. Well, I'll catch you later then. Good talking to you.
Yeah, good talking to you. We'll talk again. Take care.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone, and with that, we are at the end of our time limit. Less than a minute to go, actually. And we're going to process the update, but we'll be back on tomorrow. You've heard yet another interesting... I don't know why that particular fellow and I always end up... exchanging views on Canada-U.S. relations. Maybe I'm guiding it too much, but it's just such an interesting topic. At any rate, we'll be firmly entrenched in 3304 tomorrow. This is Commander Trium signing off 1st March 3304 at 6:59:30 Zulu. Good night, everyone. See you after the update.